It's lights out on the pit wall. Welcome to the Fantasy Formula One podcast, and I'm your host, Jeanmark. Joining me this evening are my handsome Knights in Racing Armor, my bro, Dominick, and my dad, Dr. David Kessler. Tonight, we're going to prepare 1 week left before the Imola Grand Prix, and we're going to start off with our dynamic pricing report. As you can see here, there's been a lot of shifting, even though there's been no racing in the last 2 weeks. We've had some people go up and continue to skyrocket up, and some continue to plummet down. Most notable drops is Aston Martin. They've lost 0.6 million. Same thing with one of their drivers, Sebastian Vettel, has lost 0.6 million. But our big gainers, Leclerc, 500,000 increase, and Tsunoda, 500,000 increase. What are your guys' biggest reactions from those drivers that went up in price and those that dropped over this last week?
Yeah, I thought it was reasonable that Verstappen went up, and Leclerc, I think he has good potential this year, so I'm not surprised he's going up. Norris has been steady, so I like that. Tsunoda, rookie, only one race. I'm a little surprised he's going up so well, so I hope he can back it up this coming race. And then Vettel going down by 0.6. I guess he's going to have to show us some stuff to get that up again.
Yeah, so I actually have Tsunoda on my team. So anytime a driver goes up in value is always good. That's an extra 0.5. I'm now actually over 100.2 for my cap. That's great. And Tsunoda is largely responsible for that. As far as Leclerc goes, I guess a lot of people believe that he's going to have a good showing. I have no reason to believe that wouldn't be the case. You'll see his percentages gone up. As far as Vettel, I'm kind of surprised. I don't know why he would go down by that much. It seems like that's a significant drop. He didn't have a bad race 2 weeks ago, so that's a little bit surprising, to be honest. Ferrari, the constructor going up by 0.4 kind of makes sense with Leclerc going up by as much as he did. This is going to be interesting. See how these changes affect things. One of the interesting things is seeing Hamilton actually go down by 0.1%. So if we go over to the sheets, we can have a good look at that.
For this Google sheet, the link will be in the description, so you can look at all the statistics I've been tracking from fantasyformula1.com. And the big upgrade this week is I've added spark lines. It's like when you're tracking stocks, because we're tracking the value of our drivers. Column X, S with the little tilde next to it, that is your sentiment spark line. If we go to row for driver number 5, Hamilton, you'll see the line is gradually going down, and then it has this little mountain hitch. Every time there's a hitch on these lines, it means that a driver has changed their price point. And here is what I found very interesting. I've also added percentage pick. He's 28% picked, but as you notice, his spark line goes down. The two main takeaways, and I'm going to make videos in the coming weeks to explain this in detail as I have more data for dynamic pricing, but it appears that the cost of a driver is based off of their performance of the race weekend and their sentiment. Between races, that sentiment is greatly changed or fluctuates based off of how many people own the driver and how many people are giving away or picking up that driver. And over the last 2 weeks, Hamilton has been getting dropped from teams, and that's why he eventually went down in price. The other thing that I've done on the Google Sheet is if you ever see a red or green spark line, that is because it is in the top 80%. And what I have found, thank you to all of you who've commented on our last podcast video, when we talk about 80%, or let's use the example of Gasly at negative 89%. Negative 89% is the probability that his price is going to increase or decrease in the next 24 hours. This is based off my statistics. We use the term chance, and people would think, oh, that's the chance that they will change between races. No. They can change multiple times between races. It is the likelihood or the probability of them going up or down 0.1 million% in the next 24 hours. And once they get to that high 80% mark, they're getting close. People that are probably going to drop by the time this podcast releases tomorrow is Ricciardo at negative 93% and perhaps Gasly at negative 89%. Looking at the constructors, Mercedes looks like they're going to drop by another 0.1 million by this time tomorrow. And Alpine has been decreasing, and so it's eventually is going to decrease. Probably before the end of the week. This all could change, though, when we get to practice 1 and practice 2 at Imola. If a team has a strong showing and suddenly people are trying to get that team these prices might change. And that's why I'm still trying to collect data before we release an official video talking about the ins and outs of dynamic pricing. What are your guys' thoughts about tracking so that we can have a better understanding of the value habits and sentiment habits of the community towards these drivers?
Well, it's very useful information. As the season goes on, these kind of things can actually play a big part on how successful your team could be. So being able to know the trends could be very useful in the long run, making a successful team.
Plus, it looks really nice seeing all those spark lines.
Well, thank you. I've been trying my best to make sure it looks good because just looking at numbers looks really annoying. Having something that you could visualize is really nice.
Got to sprinkle a little art into it.
Exactly, to make it look great. One of my favorites is Sonoda. He looks like a mountain range. And then if you look at Vettel, it looks like the opposite mountain range. It's because one was trending up and one was trending down. Let's head on over to our teams for this coming week. We want to give a shout out to all the people who've been joining our Pitwall season-long league. We have 15 teams currently entered. The top 3 spots are held by Instinct Reviews. He's already used all 3 of the Mega Drivers, so there's a chance for people to still catch up. The league code is right here, and we'll put the link in the description below. But what we've made unique for every race is we're making a one race, one team entry league, and we'll make a new one for every single race. This one, Pitwall-Imola GP. We already have 6 entrants. That's 3 of us and 3 new individuals. The league code is right next to the leaderboard. We will post it in the description below. And the nice thing is, if you are the leader at the end of the race, we will give you a shout out on our next podcast. So we would love for you to be a part and engage. We're going to come back and talk about our teams and what we're picking after our news break. Let's kick it back over. Our first news for this week is leadership changes on 2 teams. The first team is Williams. They've brought in 3 leaders from the Volkswagen Rallying team. This leadership team was a part of a 4-year back-to-back championship bid. And so they're putting Jos Capito, head of motorsport, and 2 other individuals that he's brought in to be a part of his leadership team as they are preparing for the new regulations for Williams. How do you guys feel about Williams trying to bring in champions from another racing series to bolster their F1 bid?
Sounds pretty intelligent to me.
That is pretty intelligent. Obviously, you have to ask yourself, hey, is the thing we're doing working? And it seems for the last couple of years that what they have been doing has not been working. So if you could find some people who have run some teams and know how to get a winning mentality, it seems like that would be a good choice to see if they can't get that in their Formula One team as well.
Especially because this is the time where teams are going to start switching over to developing the car for 2022 and the huge regulation changes. So Williams, yes, they might be at the back of the grid, but if they have a good head start next year, they could be right up in the midfield or even be challenging for race wins.
The new regulations is always the time where new teams emerge. So this could be a good opportunity for them to project themselves back up on the standings.
Another team that's making leadership changes is Mercedes. Before the season even began, their engine boss, Andy Cowell, who's been with the team for over a decade, stepped away to try new challenges in life. Just announced this last week, James Allison, who is the technical director, is stepping back. Now, he's not leaving Mercedes. He's just stepping up or to the side in a new role in Mercedes management, perhaps in the Daimler side of things. But it seems like he might still have some oversight as it pertains to preparing the car for next season, even if he's not going to be intimately involved moving forward. But how do you guys feel? It seems like Mercedes is, I wouldn't say losing personnel, but they've won so many years in a row, and now their leadership are starting to move on to other pastures. So how do you guys feel about Mercedes at this time?
Well, I kind of like the idea that if you're going to change regulations and you've been winning with the certain people, they're kind of set in their ways. They might not be able to think and troubleshoot the new process that's coming. I think it's pretty smart. It may affect them a little negatively this year, but going into the future, it's probably going to be positive.
It's a good perspective I've never thought about before.
And of course, we're not saying that he's not capable of making the transition. And we're not even sure that's specifically the reason. He says he wants to try something else, but that's not necessarily because of the regulation changes. Mercedes has been winning for so long, and it's probably not even really a challenge for him anymore. And if he's been doing it for so long, and sometimes you just want to change a pace, and nobody can blame him for that. I say more power to him if he wants to go do something else.
The big thing for me to remember is that not one guy is going to make or break a team. Usually we think they're the head of that department. They're in charge of everything. But Mercedes management style by Toto Wolff is designed so that people are able to help engage each other a lot more. So as long as he continues his environment, like we were saying with Williams, if they're able to continue that winning ways mentality that Williams is trying to get, then no matter who it is, they'll probably continue to do all right. On to our next section of the news. This pertains now to tracks. Miami, Florida has been trying to get a GP hosted by that city, and it looks like they're starting to gain traction. My brother is a die-hard Miami Dolphins American football team fan, and that track will be purpose-built to go around that stadium, the Hard Rock Stadium. How do you feel about this potential race being in Miami?
It's kind of exciting. Being from America, the more American tracks, the better, I would say. It's exciting. I'm sure countries love the idea that Formula One races are taking place in their country.
Yeah, I was thinking it was kind of neat if they could just put the track right through the football field so the quarterback could just hand it to the Formula One racer and they could score a touchdown every time.
God, I'm trying to just imagine Tua handing the ball off to like Hamilton and he just drives down the track in the car. I would watch that. I really would. One time I would watch that before it's not funny anymore.
If you're trying to make Formula One a destination, you want to put it in a place that can have ease of access. Because a lot of people are saying, why are we not using like Watkins Glen up in New York or some of these other racetrack venues? It's probably because the glamour of Miami.
Miami is definitely a hot spot. Lots of partying and lots of high-end things you can go do there. So that seems like that would be a great choice for a track.
Now, the local community is not so happy because they're like, all that noise that you're talking about is going to come in and be around them. And then they're saying, well, okay, we will try to invest some $5 million into the local community. And then it's going to be marketed that this will be the first Formula One track at a predominantly Black community. It will be built in Miami Garden. How do you guys feel like if you were living in a city and they were going to bring a big old team or racetrack or football stadium and they're going to build it in your city? How do you feel about that happening?
They have a dirt track around here and you can hear them on Saturday nights and that's several miles away. You get used to it if you like the cause and think it's a neat sport.
Fun fact, Atomic Speedway, which is a dirt track, a sprint track right there where we grew up, right there in the rolling hills of Southern Ohio Valley. That is where Jeff Gordon got his start in racing. So you're saying you're able to hear that sound, which is a few miles north and over a hill and two, all the way in Waverly.
Yep. Well, let me put it also that there are mountains on the northeast and west of that track, which means all the noise is funneled down towards us.
Good point. That's a good point.
So I was actually down on a track in Ohio a couple years ago. We were doing some driving stuff, and they had some formula cars. I don't know which one. They were driving on the track. It was music to my ears. I love that sound. So a little biased maybe that I think that would be an amazing way to wake up in the morning or the afternoon. But obviously I'm not the one living there. If they can find some way to make it acceptable for the local areas, because they're the ones who are going to have to deal with it, gotta find some kind of middle ground, maybe give them a little bit more reason to want to actually have that there.
Now to our last news item. The Canadian Grand Prix might not happen this season. It's a mixture of two things, not being able to afford the cost. For those of you who are not aware, you have to pay to have Formula One come to your racetrack. And so Canada is trying to figure out how to afford it. On the second hand, they have COVID restrictions still, that if they don't get pulled away or relaxed, it could make it very difficult to get Formula One all in their race and then get out to go to the next first race. And so there is potential that the Canadian Grand Prix won't happen and it would get replaced by the Turkish Grand Prix. Yeah, looks like, what is your reaction, bro? You like Turkey?
So I love the Canada GP. It's a classic. One of the greatest races potentially of our modern time was raced there. There's a lot of history there. It would be a shame to see it go. I'm assuming this wouldn't be permanent. Maybe it's just for the year. If you're going to have to replace it with something, I'd say Turkey is definitely an acceptable alternative. I do love that track a lot.
And I think if they're going to do that, they should have it in November on Thanksgiving Day in Turkey.
You will all become very familiar with the Kessler dry humor and the puns. That's probably not the only one you're going to hear us go through. But yes, Turkey had an interesting race last season, and I know a lot of fans want it to come back. But last season, because there could be no fans, they were able to make it profitable because they were getting charged less to host it. And maybe something similar would happen this time around. Some people have talked about maybe having like a rotation of tracks so that if you have 23 tracks on the calendar, every other year, like 5 to 6 tracks are getting rotated in and out. So you get more variation. Because Turkey's a nice track, but if the organizer's saying, well, we can make more money for another track, Turkey will always get overlooked. The main thing is we want to see great racing at great tracks, and it's amazing if Turkey could potentially come back because no one thought before COVID started last year there was a chance Turkey was ever going to be raced again. If we get it again this year, that'll be great, but it's sad if we can't race at Canada 2 years in a row. Let's go into our last section. This is our team picks. We're going to go over and just take a moment to review our team picks for the Imola GP. I've got Verstappen, Norris, Giovinazzi, Russell, Tsunoda, and Mercedes as my constructor. You can view other users' teams after the first race week locks. Okay, bro, since I can't see it, who do you have on your team?
So my team is currently Verstappen, Tsunoda, Ocon, Gasly, Russell, and Mercedes. And so how that mostly went down was I decided I want Mercedes. And then I was like, well, I need a good driver. So I went with Verstappen. Tsunoda drove really well last week. Like, I'm going to basically need to budget the rest of my drivers just because Mercedes and Verstappen cost a whole lot of money. But I was like, Tsunoda's probably a solid choice. Seems like a lot of people are agreeing with that recently. And then my last 3 drivers were basically just cap space filler.
Okay. And then, Dad, what is your team makeup?
Well, I decided that I wanted Verstappen and Norris, and so I ended up going with Red Bull as my constructor, so I could have Sainz for about 14 million, Gasly for 11, and then Ocon. After Gasly's how he did last week, I thought about changing him for Tsunoda, but I thought, well, let's see how the rookie does. Give him another week to show that he can be consistent and see if Gasly can turn around before I trade him out.
Well, thank you for sharing. It'll be interesting. Like I said, in the description below, you can get access to our one race, one team entry league, and we'll shout out the number 1 score for this next week. We'll then kick it over to our league DRD picks at this time. And welcome to the manager tab. This is where we're going to pick our lineup for the Imola Grand Prix. Since Bro finished last with 0 battle race points, he gets to pick first. Just to recap for everybody, when you pick a guy on the left, it will make it so that he has a selection of drivers available to him. And so you will actually be picking from that section on the columns. And you'll see as we go. So, bro, who is the first driver you want to pick?
I mean, I want to go with Norris because he did so good. But will he do good a second time? That's the question.
No, he'll do terrible.
So I'm assuming what you're suggesting is that I don't pick him. And then while I'm at it, I'll get Mazepin as my second choice. You know what? I'll go for it. We'll see if Norris has got that magic twice. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Norris as my first option.
Okay, now it's my choice. Well, the Ferrari surprised me. I'm going to go with Leclerc. What about you, Dad? Who is your pick?
I'm trying to remember
How to spell Mazepin so you can pick him?
I'm trying to decide as far as Ricardo. He is the second on McLaren, so he won't get the points for being the most scored on that one. Ferrari is Leclerc, so Sainz wouldn't probably beat him. It'd be interesting. hate to say Tsunoda, him being a rookie.
Well, just remember that you picked twice. Your first pick should probably help you with your second.
If he picks Tsunoda, those were the 3 winners from last week, right? Norris,
Right.
Leclerc, and Tsunoda.
So I'll take Tsunoda.
Okay, he's taking Tsunoda. And since Tsunoda's a little bit lower, gets to pick almost anybody. Okay, so now we're going to go to column AB. You get to pick from column AB. Which of those drivers you want to pick?
So if I actually can't get Ricardo or Sainz this time because I did the opposite.
Right, so it might have been better to pick lower so that you can then pick high.
Especially since you're picking twice. So if you're watching and you're not 100% sure what's going on, your first pick will determine who you could pick for your second. My dad picks Tsunoda. So if you look at this column here, he gets anybody that's blue down, anywhere from Giovinazzi all the way down to Mazepin, assuming that that driver has not already been picked.
Correct.
So he's got a couple options.
And this is why it's called the DRD, or the driver rotational draft system, because we don't have a salary cap. And so this way, your performance causes you to have to pair differently. Dad, are you going to switch off Tsunoda to get a different opportunity?
No, I'm going to take Vettel.
Okay.
Interesting.
He was not convinced, and now he's picking him up.
So why Vettel?
Because you guys made me think that he might settle down. I could be wrong.
Interesting. Okay, so it's now
Right.
my turn. I really should pick Ricardo.
So
Deal. You can't pick,
you can't pick him.
You can't pick Ricardo.
Right. You're on Leclerc. You're on
Oh.
Zai.
For you, is Schumacher down.
Silly me. Okay, sorry,
Jeez, it's
everyone.
almost like we made the rules of this game. We don't even remember how they work.
Column
Yes.
Y. So I have
so-
Schumacher, Gasly, Latifi, Alonso, or Massa. Oh, I'm picking Gasly. Gimme.
That was gonna be my choice.
Okay, so you have Norris. So you've got
You
3
want
options: Latifi, Alonso, or Mazepin.
Well, I'm going with Alonso. That seems like that's a pretty obvious choice. And then so now for my final option, I could get Ricardo. I don't know why I'd want both McLarens, but I could. I've got all these options, and I'm just trying to figure out if any of them are the correct one. Because a lot of these are very these are going to be middle of the road fantasy point picks. So the question is, which one of these will be the best middle of the road fantasy point pick? Okay, well, I'm going to go with Stroll then as my final choice.
Now it's my pick. I get good old Ricardo.
Oh, you actually made sure you could do that this time.
Okay, and then Dad gets last pick with Vettel.
And he's got plenty of options.
Yeah, I'll probably go with Sainz. Yeah, I'm not very confident in my team this time. I was pretty confident last time.
Really? Well, let's go to the
Mhm.
draft page, and it's time to pick. Bro, who are you putting in slot 1?
So my first slot, since I get to go first, I'm going to go with Alonso.
Versus Alonso, I'm going to pick Gasly. Who are you going to pick, Dad?
Sainz.
Signs. Slot 2, I get to pick first. And I'm going to pick Leclerc.
Oh, geez.
Dad gets to pick.
I'll pick Vettel.
I'm going to go with Norris.
Okay, and then, of course, what's left is Tsunoda and Stroll and Ricardo. So we're going to type in Discord who our turbos will be. 3,
Oh,
2,
boy.
1.
Here we go.
It's lights out, and the turbos have come out. Leclerc is getting turboed, and Sainz is getting turboed, and Alonso is getting turboed. So this week, the 2 turbos are coming out in slot 1.
I picked wrong, but we'll see. We'll see what
You think
happens.
you picked wrong? Why did
Maybe.
you pick Alonso the turbo?
I didn't think I was going to actually have anybody else turbo up there.
So you thought Alonso would have enough to beat Sainz or Gasly? That's actually
I thought that was going to be easy.
Well, I almost went with Tsunoda. Tsunoda.
Massacring his name.
But I was afraid that Jeanmark would turbo Ricardo.
Oh, really? I don't think I need the turbo Ricardo to beat Stroll or Tsunoda. So that's why I decided to not turbo him.
So I should have turboed him, and then I could have potentially beat.
Potentially.
Yeah, you should have. You should have.
But look,
In fact, you should have turboed Vettel actually and done me a favor.
Vettel would never have taken out Leclerc.
I mean,
So-
maybe last year.
I'm just hoping that the rookie can take out Ricardo
you
and Stroll.
hope so?
Yeah, you gotta have hope. Realistically, it probably won't happen, but you gotta have hope.
True.
It should be interesting whether or not Leclerc turboed can beat Norris.
Norris would have to have a astronomical race if it's based off the first race. Oh man,
Bro, it sounds like
Well,
you
we'll
feel sad that you're going to lose all three again.
sad. No. This is just an opportunity to prove that my team's brakes don't go out with Alonso, and we'll see what happens.
Well, we're going to end it there for our picks. Signing off. Thank you, bro. And thank you, Dad. And we'll see you on the pit wall. Peace.